Here the argument for is that if we went in, the divisions of Europe would be lessened, though not, of course, abolished, since there'd still be the Eastern Common Market, Comecon. In principle, this would increase both Europe's influence and our influence in Europe. Our influence, for example, to join in counteracting the new ultra-nationalist movement in Germany. The political objections are raised by France. In nuclear politics, they dislike our tie with America. Some believe France is after Anglo-French nuclear cooperation. The talks that begin this weekend may help to decide if committed Europeans in Britain get their way. Today, the European Parliament met in Strasbourg in eastern France. They've been meeting all this week. It's the Parliament of the Six. Its members are elected by the MPs of the 6 countries from among themselves. It has about a quarter the numbers of the House of Commons and meets 7 or 8 times a year. This was one of the occasions when the Parliament was graced by some of the top men of the 6, sitting in the front rows of the semicircular chamber. The Council of Ministers were there. In the front row on the left, the Dutch Foreign Minister, Mr. Leunts, as their president for the time being. The other 5 foreign ministers fielded substitutes. This council is in name the supreme body, but it's the 9 men of the Common Market Commission, permanent senior officials working out of Brussels, who really rule the new Europe. Each has his own realm. The agriculture king, for example, is Dr. Sicko Mansholt, another Dutchman. And the king emperor is Dr. Walter Hallstein, a German, president of the Common Market Commission. Also at Strasbourg were some of the 9 men who run the European coal and steel community, the oldest of the 3 communities that link the 6. It began in '51. 6 years later came the economic community, the common market, and at the same time the atomic energy community, Euratom, headed by a 5-man commission sparsely represented at Strasbourg.
Ladies and gentlemen, however, would only be
this parliament serves all 3 communities. Its work is translated into their 4 official languages, German, French, Italian and Dutch, and also, just in case, into English. And all these community institutions are scattered over 3 cities. The Common Market Commission in Brussels, also in Brussels, the councils of ministers for the 3 communities, in Luxembourg, their Court of Justice, and in Strasbourg, their parliament. The parliament borrows a building which belongs to the Council of Europe. This is a well-endowed debating society with 18 Western European members founded here in '49. Strasbourg's an early home of the European idea. Yet it's a very French nationalist city too. French flags sprout on the Kaiser's palace where the Germans ruled Strasbourg and all Alsace from before 1918. It's a great city for flags. Even the cathedral flies one. At the top of its tall, pink, convoluted bulk, the survivor of infinite bombardments. Louis XIV slept here, or at any rate took the city over and got his man Vauban to fortify it against outsiders with menacing square towers. And all this because the rivers and canals that split the city have almost reached their terminus. Just downstream at the eastern edge of the city is the Rhine, the frontier with Germany. 3 times in the last 100 years, the Germans have occupied the city. But a Winston Churchill bridge now building commemorates the fact that because of this torn history, Sir Winston chose Strasbourg in 1949 to make a speech demanding that Europe should unite. For Strasbourg, it was a false dawn. The only consequence was the Council of Europe. And the new flats round the new bridge will simply house Strasbourgers, not civil servants of a new European capital. But the idealism remains. The rebuilt Rhine frontier bridge is charged with symbolism too. There's a park beside where the citizens can go and look at it, and they're asked to call it the Europe Bridge. In terms of dreary political realities, though, mutual understanding has a long way to go. As in all parliaments, what matters is often said privately, not publicly. Britain's entry has been scarcely raised aloud. MPs can neglect the proceedings or film them. The fact is that the Parliament of the Six has virtually no powers. It gives advice. On a 2/3 vote, it can sack the senior permanent civil servants, the men in the front rows. It never has. Its members aren't directly elected by the people of the 6 countries, and it has no say over money or budgets. Otherwise, of course, it might become supranational, more important than national parliaments, which frightens some people. So its members learn to live with its limitations.
Nämlich die 6 nationalen Marktordnungen zu einer EEC-Marktordnung für Landwirtschaft. Bisher ist uns die Agrarpolitik der Gemeinschaft.
And Dr. Hallstein listens tolerantly and goes his way. As to whether the Parliament should have more control over Brussels, Mr. Leunts has views. So has another Dutch MP by the name of Mr. van der Goes van Natters.
What is real control? We have always the right to vote them down. Eh? It has not yet been used, but we have the right. And they know, and so the Commission in Brussels is a political body itself and is responsible to this political body and is taking the consequences from that more or less. But it is a pity we have not more control.
You would, in fact, like to see the degree of control increased?
Sure. At first we should like to have general elections, and then we should have like to have real control on the budget in order that the Parliament is speaking the last voice on the budget, and that is not the case now, and we must have that. And there we reckon on your country, on the English, who are very parliamentarian-minded, and I hope my English friends will see that it is absolutely necessary in a body as the European Community to have a parliament who is more or less a super parliament, and in order that the mother of parliaments will have another mother above it.
Hitherto we have not succeeded in giving more power, especially in the field of the budget and in the field of the huge funds which in the agricultural sector now accrue to the Commission and over which the national parliaments have no longer any saying. That's a great problem, you know.
But you'd need budgetary powers, and you'd also need direct election of your members.
Well, the direct elections might come later, I think. Might come later because that would go rather far in the direction of supranational powers for which some countries are not quite ready, and perhaps some countries which want to become member of the community.
Do you share yourself these fears of supranational powers?
Less than other countries, I may say. Anyhow, a country which would become member on the treaty as it stands now, and would of course deliberate and have its power, very often the power of veto, in a direction which it would like to follow. I hope this is clear.
But Strasbourg knows that these aren't the main issues for Britain. The main issues for Britain are economic and political. Economically, the chief argument for Britain's going in, perhaps the chief argument of all, is the wider market. The economic obstacles centre on food and farming. Politically, the advantage is wider influence for Britain in Europe and for Europe in the world. The political difficulties are likely to be the attitude of the French government, notably on sterling and defence. Take all that one at a time. The economic case for, first of all, the chief persuasion, the wider market. How much wider? Britain has a home market of 54 million people. The 6 will have a home market of 180 million in 19 months' time. So if Britain went in, she'd have access to a home market of 234 million people in the end. In fact, if the whole of EFTA and Ireland went in, the figure would go up to 280 million. But not all EFTA countries will want to. Will British industry want this wider market? An answer from the chairman of De La Rue's and a common market expert, Mr. Jerry Norman.
Almost certainly. I think the fact that our exports to the European Economic Community have increased a good deal faster, 115% in fact since 1958, as opposed to EEC exports to the UK, which have been only, I think, 94% in that period. So this shows that we do have efficient industries. We do have the products that the Europeans want. And what is happening now, of course, with the split of Europe into the 2 blocks and the tariffs, the common external tariff rising against British industry, that this is going to become more difficult, unless there is a move together of these 2 trading blocks.
One obvious beneficiary will be the motor industry, which has invested heavily in assembly and distribution setups on the continent in the last few years. This plant is at Malines in Belgium. British manufacturers hope that if Britain joins the Six, they can double their share of the continental market, though car imports into Britain would go up a bit too. In general, the industries that would profit are the science-based ones that need a large market to get the benefit of large-scale production. Chemicals, fibers, plastics, electrical and mechanical engineering, electronics, computers. In sum, this is the chief economic advantage of Britain's going in: wider sales of British goods abroad. And citizens of Europe would see the difference on their roads and even in their bars. Now the economic disadvantages. The free movement of workers throughout industrial Europe has sometimes been presented as one. The movement would, of course, be two-way. People might leave Britain for the sun. It's true that this steelworks at Velsen in Holland has numbers of Italians among its busloads of workers. On the other hand, there are signs that Italians are finding more to do at home. This is among the problems of the coal and steel community, which has been going through a difficult patch. Euratom, the other technical community, doesn't have the same difficulty. Atomic energy research, as at Petten on the Dutch coast, is expensive on funds, but not manpower. All 6 countries, of course, are spanned by the 3 communities: the European coal and steel community, dating from 1951, the European atomic energy community, set up in 1957 under the treaties of Rome, like the European economic community, the common market itself. The mobility of labour is a fact daily present to the Common Market Commission in Brussels. They've got workers from outside Belgium on their doorstep, modernising the town. Brussels is a fairly old place. It altogether lacks the elegant appeal of Paris, as NATO staff compelled to transfer from Paris to Brussels are finding to their cost. But its Grand Place is not without amenity. And down a cobbled side street crammed with lace shops, you come on one of the more celebrated tourist conversation pieces in Europe. Even so, now that Brussels is the new capital of Western Europe, it has some quick catching up to do, and it can use outside help. The North Africans in the workforce have to take their chance as foreigners. But the people from inside the Six, mostly Italians, get almost the social benefits that Belgians would. The system will be complete, like so much else in the Six setup, by mid-1968. The work, which is partly for a new tube, goes on right outside the existing Commission office building, under the eye of Dr. Hallstein and his 3,000 officials toiling away in 4 languages. But just down the road, a new block for the Commission is rising out of the mud, shaped like a hollow triangle. Brussels intends to stay the capital of Europe. On a hill a mile away is the meeting place of the Commission's nominal masters, the Council of Ministers. They borrow the Belgian Ministry of Education. In the Council, there's 1 minister from each country. Properly the foreign minister, but it varies according to what's on the agenda. Last week it was the agriculture ministers, or rather their representatives. But again, the faithful Dutch minister was there, Mr. Biesheuvel, as president for the time. Council meetings on agriculture are frequent and sometimes fraught. For all the cordiality, farming has presented the most difficult problems the Six have had to settle, and they're not all settled yet. Here again, a common policy is to be working by mid-68. But just because it's been so hard to settle, there'll be great resistance to the idea of changing it to suit Britain. Yet Britain would have problems. Not Dutch tulips or even Dutch tomatoes. It goes wider than that. It's the core of the economic difficulty about Britain's entry. Britain imports, by sea, about half her food. Much of it comes from the Commonwealth at low rates of duty. Much of it is grain. These low rates of duty would have to stop. Instead, an actual surcharge, a levy, would have to be paid by the importer. Wholesale food prices would be set at a new and higher level so that home farmers got their money from sales, not from subsidies. And the levy would bring imported food prices up to that same level. This would hit Commonwealth producers by limiting their market. British grain farmers suitably mechanised would get higher prices and might be able to sell more to fill the Commonwealth gap. The same for beef farmers, though their cattle feed would cost them more. All farmers would lose their subsidies. Milk producers are uneasy. Most continental milk goes for butter and cheese, and the prices are set accordingly. Along with butter, lamb from New Zealand typifies the Commonwealth problem. We're by far New Zealand's biggest market, and some exception would have to be made. But British sheep farmers have their own worries, partly over the way the sick treat wool. The National Farmers Union view from their chief economist, Mr. Asher Weingarten.
The main problem would undoubtedly affect the livestock section of the industry, the people who produce milk, beef, pig meat and so on. And the reason is that the adoption of the cereals regulation would lead to an increase in the prices that they have to pay for cereal feeding staffs of the order of £10 a tonne. Now, since we use something like 10 million tonnes, this would mean that their total feed bill would go up by about 100 million, probably more, 100 million pounds. This would, for example, mean an increase in the cost of milk of 3 to 4 a gallon, 10 shillings per score for pigs and so on. And these are very serious increases. Now, the beef producer would probably obtain an increase in the market price, which would more than offset this increased cost, except that some of the production grants which he obtains today would disappear, and this would therefore reduce the attractiveness of what appears to be a higher price. There is no doubt also that the grain producer would obtain better prices initially, except that he would be faced with the long-term consequences of a policy which would distort the balance of British agriculture as between grain on the one hand and livestock production on the other.
Mr. Weingarten went on to say that growers might be in trouble too. Tomato men up against Dutch competition, for example. Once we were inside the community's common external tariff, Dutch tomatoes could compete on equal terms with British in Britain. And they would have to sell at the rate fixed by the community, which would probably be higher than at present. And there'd be no question of cheaper ones from outside the community. Rather the reverse. Commonwealth imports, for example, would be increased in price by the levy to a set target, whereas community-produced stuff would be allowed to fall a little below it. So prices in the shops, wherever the food came from, would probably go up. The Prime Minister has said in the House that food prices would go up by 10 to 14%. But that would be over a period of years, a few points a year. A vital question is how long this transitional period would be. The government are believed to want 7 years, and the Commission may be ready to offer 6. Further economic difficulties follow. The levies paid by food importers would go to the government. The government would then have to turn this sum into foreign currency and pay most of it, plus a further contribution, into the Common Market's Agricultural Guidance and Guarantee Fund. This could be a 200 million a year drain on the balance of payments. A further knock to the poor old balance of payments. The French and other continental stock exchanges might attract more British capital than prudence would allow, but the rules allow it. So much for the economic arguments one way and the other. Now, briefly, the political. Here the argument for is that if we went in with most of EFTA, the divisions of Europe would be lessened. Though not, of course, abolished, since there'd still be the Eastern Common Market, Comecon. In principle, this would increase both Europe's influence and our influence in Europe. Our influence, for example, to join in counteracting the new ultra-nationalist movement in Germany, which is the richest and most populous member of the six. The political objections are raised by France, the Bank of France, temple of French financial orthodoxy, where they hoard gold and dislike the gold exchange standard under which the dollar and sterling are reserve currencies. They say it permits dollar imperialism and could involve other countries in sterling's weakness. There have been French hints that sterling would have to stop being a reserve currency. The remnants of the Raj in the Far East annoy the French too. Basically, here and in nuclear politics, they dislike our tie with America. Some believe France is after Anglo-French nuclear cooperation. All common market themes end in Brussels. And there's a common market allegory in the powerful Brussels trams. Trams are almost exclusively continental now. Like the market, a tram is a going concern with a fixed program. Sometimes a uniformed ruler controls its movements and even its passengers. New passengers must wait meekly at the stop and board by agreement with the other passengers. They may or may not be able to get comfortable once they're inside. But of course, if they don't like one tram, they can always look for another. At the southern end of one Brussels tram line, there's a school for the children of the new European civil servants. It's a microcosm of Western Europe. Committed Europeans in Britain wouldn't mind seeing their own children grow up in the same atmosphere, where mistrust of foreigners and their ways is less the rule than it is today, whatever ordinary rivalries still exist. The talks that begin this weekend may help to decide if they're to get their way.